All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Play Pause Rewind. We are on our 31st episode. That is very, very exciting. Niles, how have you been since we last recorded?
Great. As always. Excited to talk about this movie today, as we always are. I'm just red with envy over here, but this is a great movie. I'm wearing a red T-shirt for anyone who's listening just through Spotify or something. But today we're talking about Turning Red. But before we get into that, Dylan, how are you?
Pretty good. It's been a busy couple weeks, but actually, I forgot to say a second ago, we passed a milestone for our show. We crossed 500 downloads over the weekend.
Woo!
So, woo! I know it's not
team.
It's not a ton for a podcast. It's been going over a year, but this is our 31st episode, so I think that's pretty okay. But yeah, that being said, if you want to share the show around with other people who like it, we'd like to continue to grow. But yes, we are talking about Turning Red, the new Pixar movie. It was the first Pixar film developed by an all-female leadership team. I'm not sure exactly what the cutoff for leadership team is, but it was directed by Dami Shi, who created the short film Bao, which aired in front of a previous Pixar movie. And do you remember Bao?
It rings a bell.
It's the one where it's the one where she makes like a little dumpling and it comes to life, except that it's really a metaphor for her son, and it's about it's really good. It's really excellent. But
I'll have to look that up. Yeah, I haven't seen that.
So we'll run through the credits real quick. It was also written by Dami Shi, Julia Cho, and Sarah Streicher. Sorry. And stars Rosalie Chang, Sandra Oh, Ava Morse, Hyan Park, Maitreyi Ramakrishnan, Ryan Lee, Wai Ching Ho, and Tristan Alaric Chen.
Nice.
And this movie, and we can speculate as to why, was only released on Disney Plus, which is baffling to me, as it's a Pixar movie and they're always like great. I don't know what the hell they were thinking with this. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that my theory is that it has to do with the targeting for this movie. This is clearly a kids movie. And I mean, kids can go to the movie theater and see movies, like there's nothing wrong with that, but I assume parents just don't really have the time sometimes to take their kids to the movie, and they just need to put something on the background while they're work, working at home. I don't know, that's just my theory, but yeah, I don't know why they just did Disney Plus exclusively. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, like, my cynic brain goes off thinking, I mean, like, first all-female developed movie. It's about a Chinese Canadian. It has a subplot about like menstruation, which people are irrationally upset about, and we can talk about it a little bit later. I don't know, because it's fucking Pixar. Like, they're all kids movies and they've always been released in theaters. I understand it's COVID, but it's not like other Disney and Pixar movies weren't released in theaters. So I don't really know. I think it's very suspicious.
It is weird that they chose that, but whatever.
And they didn't even do the Black Widow thing where you had to pay for it to watch it on Disney Plus, which
that's very strange. Maybe they were just like, who cares? Let's just shove it out into the void. Let's get some more content out there. We need more kids movies on Disney Plus. Put it out there.
It's and like, I'm happy to watch it at home and not pay for it, but kind of what the hell? Why this one? But yeah,
of course.
But let's talk about the movie itself for a little bit. We'll do non-spoilers for a couple minutes and then spoilers after that. But it's a coming of age story about a 13-year-old Chinese Canadian girl growing up in Toronto, and her name is May. And basically, she's being torn between sort of following in her mother's footsteps and being the ideal daughter, and more discovering herself and being a little bit more rebellious. All this happens as she suddenly transforms into a giant red panda, which is adorable. And
poof.
Yeah. So nothing too specific there because we're non-spoilers. But what did you think of the movie overall?
Overall, it's just pleasant.
Mhm.
I think the goal of a child's movie, really at the end of the day, is just to have you walk away with this like just sense of like warmth and just
Mhm.
happiness. You know, you walk away and you say, "Oh, that was so sweet. I'm so happy I watched that. Like that was such a nice ending." Like, you know,
Yeah.
you kind of want that when you're walking away from a children's movie. And this, I feel like, hit that nail right on the head. I don't really watch a lot of children's movies these days. You know, I just mainly watch superhero content. It's a little
Mhm.
bit different.
Yeah, that's
But
for adults. That's for men.
yeah, manly man. But yeah, I think overall this was a great movie.
Mhm.
And you know, just like as you were saying too, she's a Chinese Canadian girl here in Canada, and I'm just a fan of like any kind of movie that deviates from like the US
Mhm.
centric viewpoint, because I feel like a lot of movies that are created are based in the US. It's a
Mhm.
US character, or like, you know, it's like it's just nice to get a break from the United States.
Yeah, yeah, it was a somewhat unique setting. And there's so many people who talk about this movie is like it's not relatable. It's like that's a you problem, my friend. Because movie was plenty relatable, and also it reminded me of, and it reminded other people too of several years ago. Remember when all the nerds turned on Brie Larson because she had the audacity to point out that almost every film critic is a white man, and she was like, if you are a if you make a movie about a woman of color, there's a very small percentage chance that a woman of color will be able to see and review it, and that might affect the like perception of the movie because the reviews are more negative. Well, what do you
Right.
know? Here we are, and that exact thing happened. So shut the fuck up, nerds. Because she was right. And if like this is not an unrelatable movie though, right? Like it's a very
No,
universal like coming of age thing. Like not turning into a bear, but obviously the you know the like element of sort of self-discovery and rebelling a little bit and discovering who you are. Like everybody goes through that. How do you not relate to that? It's a very
right.
strange criticism.
No, yeah, it's bizarre that
Mhm.
someone would say this is not a relatable movie, because I think I saw like an article headline that's like, is this movie too relatable? Like there's too
Huh.
much relatability here. But
Yeah.
um I don't know. But I think I agree with you, Dylan, on that point. And it's I just don't know, because at the same time, I obviously Dylan and I, we are two white
Yeah.
men. So this movie wasn't exactly made for us. We're not exactly the target audience for it, but you know, we still enjoyed it overall. And not to get too much into spoilers, but I felt like I connected with the main character, May. She's mainly because of like my background and like, you know, how I kind of grew up, and
Mhm.
like how dedicated I was to my own schooling and like kind of pleasing others. So I connected with her for sure. So I just don't see how, you know, someone says this is not a relatable movie. This feels very relatable to me. So
Mhm.
I don't know where that
Yeah.
kind of commentary is coming from.
It's yeah, it's like we talked about with the Disney Plus exclusive release, it's a little suspicious. That sort of critique. It might be what we call a self-report. um but moving on. So it's music is composed by Billie Eilish. I did not know that. Thank you for adding that in. That's cool.
Yeah,
The music was great, and music is a big part of the plot of this movie as well, as we'll talk about later on.
yeah, yeah. I'm not sure how much of the music was composed by her, but I know that I'm like about 99% sure that like the boy band music that
Mhm.
was produced by her. But I
Okay.
think they had someone else, you know, obviously come in and record it and kind of do the rest of it. But yeah, and I also felt that this film was respectful of you know, Asian cultures.
Mhm.
Uh, I do not consider myself to be an expert in that by any means at all. um, but from what was portrayed in the film and what was communicated, it to me this felt like a respectful and appropriate representation.
Yeah, there was nothing in there that was like, oh no. From what I could
Yeah, no
tell
like
anyway.
terrible stereotypes from what I could really tell.
Yeah. And the Panda's cute as fuck. It's a cute little bear.
The panda is adorable. Oh my god, I love red pandas. There was a
Yep.
long time there where they were my favorite animals.
Red pandas are delightful, and I did think it was kind of fun. We'll talk about it in spoilers. Never mind. But the panda's cute in typical Pixar movie fashion. It's just like a strong emotional core to the story, and it really hits all of the beats just as it needs to. I think it's not like it's not a super out there concept in terms of Disney or Pixar animation, but it's very well executed, satisfying. The characters are great. I like the art style, the animation, everything.
Yeah.
So.
Structurally, it's hits all those same beats that you can expect a kids movie to hit, and a Pixar movie too. Like, the Pixar movie is going to hit like this point, and then they're going to have the low point in the middle where they kind of separate from the friend group, and then they're going to reunite in the big climax at the end. And that's exactly what this movie did too. Like, it was beat for beat, pretty on point with what you would expect.
Yeah.
To that end, I think that the plot is a little simple for my taste, but
okay.
It's a kids movie. It's a kids movie. So
yeah, there's like if you watch a lot of movies, you'll know pretty much how this is gonna go, but I don't really cite that as a flaw for this type of film. That's exactly what it's trying to do. It like saying that's bad would be kind of disingenuous, I think. Like, you kind of know once you start seeing the panda and how it all works, you kind of like in your brain are mapping out like, oh, this is how this element is going to play out, and it does that, but it's okay. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
But
it works, and it's a cute movie. Yeah.
And the movie's just like, it's overall it's really cute and fun and emotionally strong. Spoilers?
Let's do it. Let's get into it.
Cool. Okay, so great protagonist, May, as we talked about. She's pretty relatable, as we agree on, but some people don't. And yeah, she has a good emotional like conflict she's dealing with throughout.
Yeah. So like, just to summarize the film a little bit more. So, we get to meet May, and like the first thing we get to know about her is she's like a straight A student. She's kind of like a straight edge. She aims to please with her parents. And then as the movie progresses, we learn a little bit more about her history and who she is, where her family lineage comes from. And then she starts to kind of go through puberty, and she becomes this red panda when she gets really emotional. And, over the course of the film, she becomes kind of a different person. She rebels a little bit more. And I think she's a great protagonist for this kids film because she's relatable. She's compassionate. She's respectful to her family. But then throughout the film, she starts to think a little bit more for herself, and she starts to become more vocal, and she's not as like scared of her mom as she might have been like at the start of the film, or scared of disappointing her. And kind of what I was mentioning earlier is when I was growing up, I feel like I did well in school, and a part of me when I was younger, especially elementary school, I think I really enjoyed school, like going there, and that just sounds so lame. But it's just who I was, and there's nothing wrong with that, like being like kind of a boring straight A student, whatever. But sooner or later we all kind of rebel and we find our own path, and that's kind of why I connected with May as well. As as time went on, I started to say, fuck it, I'm gonna smoke weed, I'm gonna do other things, I'm gonna explore. Like, that's just part of growing up.
Yeah, and I feel like too, one interesting element of May's character growth in this is at the beginning of the film with her narration, she describes herself as like a rebel who does her own thing. And then we meet all her like group of friends in that really fun little sequence. And then at the end of the day, she like runs to catch the tram to get home so she can help at the temple. And like, she's like, well, I'm not really that rebellious. And then we see the honest thing, and the movie sort of follows her as she actually actualizes what she told us she was at the beginning. And she doesn't even really like, she's not trying to rebel all that much throughout the movie. She's just like figuring out who she is, I think, is the better like way to look at it. And she does that through rebellion a little bit, but that's not her her objective isn't to like separate from her parents. It's just about figuring out who she is. And I thought that was really sweet. And like the external goal of the main characters is to get to go to a concert. And that's kind of like low stakes as far as things are concerned. But I think like a lot of people can relate to that experience too. It's like you want to go to a party, you want to go to a concert, but you're on that like 12 to 13 age range and you're not really allowed to do that stuff yet, but it doesn't feel that unreasonable to want to do it. And so that's sort of the conflict you're having. I think it brought that to life pretty well.
No, yeah, I agree. And I connect with that too, because when I was younger, I had a hard time scrimping and saving for things that I wanted. You know, as soon as I get my allowance, I'm gonna spend it. I'm a big spender. I'm a high roller, and you know, I could never save up for bigger purchases. Like it's a miracle that we ever had like gaming consoles when I was growing up. Like because we would, you know, we didn't save. We just kind of spent as kids, and that's just kind of what kids do. So kudos to this group of kids for resisting that urge to just spend your money really quickly as you're earning it.
But even beyond the money part, it's like you have that thing that's important to you at the time. Maybe not that big a deal, but it's like your parents say no because they don't see the value in it or they actively dislike it. And then it's just about, and that's where the rebellion in this movie comes from. It's like they're doing all this stuff in secret because their parents won't allow it. They get away with quite a lot.
Yeah, they do.
But I think there are low stakes in that element of the plot. The higher stakes are about getting rid of the panda spirit, which we'll talk about in a second. But like, I think the low stakes of the concert goal were very intentional and work really well because it's an honest like ambition for a 13-year-old to have. Like,
yeah, I would definitely agree with that. You know, moving kind of along in a similar line of thinking, we have this note here about what the main conflict of this movie is, and it definitely is about this mother-daughter dynamic between May and her overbearing mother Ming. And God, yeah, she's like the one character in this movie where I feel like it might be kind of like a bit of a stereotype. But I think everyone's kind of seen that helicopter parent behavior, and it's goddamn embarrassing. Like if she did the stuff that she did in this movie, like in the first half, oh my God, I die of embarrassment.
Oh yeah, completely unacceptable behavior. Like, oh my God, mortifying. Like she sees the drawings of May and like the store clerk like kissing, I guess, and just jumps to the worst conclusions, and in front of her daughter and like 30 people just shows the pictures. Like, no, you cannot do that. You can't do that.
That's traumatizing. That scars you for life.
Yeah, no, and then bringing the pads to the school.
Yeah, that's
not acceptable either.
That was a pretty funny scene though when she was standing behind the tree. Like your mom's outside.
It was very funny. Just a second.
Yeah, that is she does all and very embarrassing things. Yeah.
And I would agree with you about the mom being a potential stereotype if it was written by someone who was not also a Chinese Canadian.
Yes.
And it is. So if that was her experience, then that's totally valid. I mean, it's like, but if it were like one of us writing it, yeah, it would be a fucking problem, but it's not. So it's not an issue. I don't think.
Yeah.
But that dynamic is definitely the emotional crux of the movie, really. And it sort of manifests through the panda spirit. And also, as we find out later in the movie, like Ming, the mom, has a very similar dynamic to her mother. And we find out also that all the women in their family have this panda spirit, and all of them, up until May, have chosen to expel it. And so I think the real emotional crux of the plot is May deciding, am I going to be like my mom and expel this spirit, or am I going to embrace it and it's like integrate it into a part of me and be my own person? and that I thought was a nice little arc. The panda spirit was a great way to anthropomorphize it, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah, I think
Because
so.
the spirit presentation has like a lot of personality. It brings out more of her personality, and then so we get to see who she is with the spirit as she's deciding whether or not to get rid of it. I think it works really well.
Yeah, I think it works really well as too. And the dynamic between Ming and Mei, I think so many like mothers and daughters can relate to that, and the fact that her and just the fact that it's been kind of passed down from one generation to the next, this difficult mother-daughter tension.
Mm-hmm.
It's just interesting, and I think a lot of mothers and daughters, they'll connect with it, and they'll kind of recognize that these kinds of behaviors, these patterns, they are inherited to a certain degree. It's familial. You'll say, you have to do it this way because that's how our family's always done it. It's like, well, it's my family now too. Like, I'm part of the family. I'm my own person. I'm going to start my own family. So why do I have to do it that way? And I mean, I definitely butted heads with my mom from time to time when I was growing up, but I don't think it's as much as my mom and my sister butted heads. They definitely had a different dynamic than I do with my mother.
Yeah, and I think everybody will have that sort of dynamic with your parents as you're growing up, like figuring out who you were going to be, and when you decide to be something different than what your parents or who your parents are or who they thought you would be, like that will lead to some conflict that you need to resolve. And I think that's like very normal and a very common thing. Like everyone will have to have those conversations and make those choices at certain points, which is another reason why it's so weird that people feel this film is unrelatable or too specific. It's like, it's really not.
Yeah. It feels very relatable to me. I don't get why anyone would say, fuck this, I don't see myself in this character. Like, what is it?
I love the little scene where they're like, the Tyler, the guy, like wants to have a cool birthday party, so he like offers to pay her to bring the panda to the party because everybody will come, which is another fun little honest element. It's like he's kind of her bully at the start of the movie, and then it's made pretty clear by this. It's like he doesn't really have that many friends. Like, so it's kind of true to what I think a lot of us understand about bullies. It's like they have something they're dealing with as well. And it doesn't excuse their behavior. But like even he gets a little like nice touch at the end. Like he's part of their group at the concert and whatever. But it so I just thought that was fun. But what I was trying to say is like they all ask themselves like, that sounds like a boy-girl party. Can we go to those? Because they're 13 and then they have to sneak out to it and lie and say they're doing like a sleepover or something. And
that's right.
They're a whole money-making scheme. They're like saying they're in the math club or something when they're secretly doing photo shoots with the panda spirit.
Yeah. Kids will be kids. They're rapscallions. But yeah, I thought the Tyler character was a good kind of inclusion, especially there at the end too, of like, oh, he's at the boy band concert. Like, I appreciated that. Especially because, like, I feel like growing up, the climate of today is a little bit different from when we were growing up, Dylan. Like, it's pretty similar, but it's slightly different. And I feel like growing up, if you were a boy, you couldn't like boy bands at all. Like it was not a thing. You couldn't go see the Backstreet Boys in concert if you were a boy, because that's not what boys did. Like I don't know. That was just the feeling that I got as a kid. But there's no reason why you can't still connect with those singers and those performers. So it was nice to see them say, no, let's just throw Tyler in there. Like, boys can enjoy boy bands too. Why not? Just go in, balls to the wall. Cool. Have fun.
Yeah. And on that note, like I just looked up to verify, but it's set in 2002. So it's set when we were kids. So it really plays into that even more. Right. So yeah, it's a period piece as well, a little bit, which is weird to call our childhood a period piece, but it is.
That's right. Because at the end they were like, people are still talking about the 2002 panda apocalypse or whatever, and it's like, oh, that's funny. That's right. Funny. Yeah. Except people weren't talking about 2002.
Yeah. So it's but yeah, so yeah, it plays into that a little bit. Like he probably felt nervous about his taste, which is another reason like he was there alone, which again says he probably doesn't have all that many friends of his own, and they kind of like adopt him right away because they're nice people.
Yeah, I appreciated that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the sequence of them exploiting the panda as well. As May says later on that it was her idea to exploit the panda for money. It's just it's just a funny sequence. It's like they're dealing drugs at the school, except it's photos with a panda.
Well, yeah, it was like it was such a great way to kind of like twist the plot around because from the get-go at the start, it's kind of like, oh, she's got a red panda, she's got to keep this secret. Like it just feels like you just have to be quiet about it. And then they were like, nope, we're gonna turn that into a money-making system where it's a pyramid scheme now, and we're gonna make a shit ton of money selling these shitty little pieces of merchandise.
Oh, that was so funny. They were just like in their little assembly line making all the keychains.
It's like awesome. I'm into that. And I thought that was really funny too. Great sequence. Like a lot of the sequences in this film, like the opening one, that one, even like some of the other ones, like I think they were just gorgeous. And it
all looked really great. The art style was cute and built up the story it was telling. And I like how everyone, all of her friends and everyone at the school, like usually in a movie about a character who transforms into something, like people will be scared or traumatized or like think it's gross. But she's turning into a cute as hell red panda. So like, of course, everybody's going to think it's adorable and love it. Like I like that they kind of portrayed how a middle schooler would react to seeing a giant like teddy bear looking thing in their school. Like people would get on board with it, and they do.
Hell yeah. If one of the students in my school transformed into a giant teddy bear, absolutely I'd become his best friend. I'd do anything to be with that kid. But if he was a swamp monster, no.
Yeah, like if you turn into Swamp Thing, like people are gonna be a little bit more uneasy. But
yeah, or the teenage werewolf or whatever that was. Like
American Werewolf in London or something.
I have no idea. But yeah.
But
it was a good idea of how to like kind of twist that trope around.
Yeah,
for sure.
But let's going back to the stakes a little bit, because we talked about earlier how the wanting to go to the concert is kind of a low stakes thing, but the stakes do get escalated a little bit because as it turns out, at the end of the second act, one of her friends got the date of the concert wrong, and it's on the same night as the ritual to get rid of the panda spirit. Oh no, now we have more conflict because she has to make a choice. Is she going to go to the concert or is she going to get rid of the panda thing? And like, you watch a lot of movies, you know how it's going to go, but it's okay. It ups the stakes and ties the external and the internal conflicts to each other, sort of. And I thought that was great. It happened at the perfect time in the movie, and it worked really well.
Yeah, and it made it for a more dramatic ending and kind of added some interesting, like, comedic, really, like, elements to it too, where she, like her friend's like, Toledo? What the fuck is Toledo? Like, no idea what it is. Like, it's a city in Ohio. Like, it says right there.
Yeah. But and that leads into a pretty satisfying climax, I think, where they're doing the ritual, and when they were doing the ritual, I love the shot when she's walking through and she looks back and she sees the panda face and it's all sad, and you're like, no, don't expel the panda. It's too cute. You need to keep it. And of course she will. But it almost made me like sad that the rest of her family just yeeted all their pandas when they like,
like,
I
they're
thought,
like, I I don't need you. Go back to the spirit world.
I kind of thought like maybe the mom would decide to keep hers as well at the end. But I guess she had already chosen her path and that wasn't the direction they wanted to go. But if I like that she decided to keep it and was like, I'm going to the concert, and it just runs away. And she breaks the pendant that controls her mom's panda. So her mom becomes an insanely large panda and follows her to the concert. Yeah, she's like a Godzilla monster panda.
I would honestly love to see a movie like that. It's a large red panda versus Godzilla. That would be a treat. Much better than Kong versus Godzilla. But
yeah. But yeah, and even that led to a further emotionally satisfying thing because they accidentally like knock the mom out and she's outside of the ritual circle. Oh no, they got to save her. And then the whole family like embraces their pandas again briefly to help move the mom. I do think it's funny. None of the rest of them are that big. It's only her mom. Like all the rest of them are just a little bit bigger than she is, but the mom is just like a skyscraper.
Yeah, her mom must have had some crazy like anger issues or something. Like, damn, that thing is huge.
Yeah, maybe she let the panda out like way more or something, or maybe something was complicated and made it harder for her to complete the ritual, and that's why hers is like meaner looking and bigger. I don't know. But it was nice to see them all come together and say like, fuck it, we got to help out and risk not being able to get rid of the pandas again.
And I love how it wasn't just like the family that came together too. It was her friends. They went up on the stage and they started doing the beatbox thing from earlier. And then they got the boy band to help. And then there was people in the audience just watching like amazed. It's like, it wasn't just like an isolated incident. Everyone came together. And I thought that was really touching and kind of a good way to wrap everything up. Perfect kind of kids movie ending right there.
I agree. It was really nice. And I really like the conclusion with her and her mom and how her mom kind of apologizes for putting all of this on her. I wish we got a little bit more though, almost. Just it feels like the mom's apology was genuine, but less than I wanted to see. Because like she really did kind of put her daughter through the ringer in this movie, and she overstepped the boundaries a lot. And I just didn't feel like the apology was adequate.
I think that's warranted. Yeah, with the amount of shit she put her daughter through, and like the fact that she's kind of like, you know, making her kid work at the temple with her, like after school, like is she getting paid for that? If not, that's child labor.
I mean, a lot of family businesses are like that though. Like,
no, yeah,
but yeah,
just being silly about
I
it.
know.
Yeah, but I don't know. I get what you mean, Dylan. Maybe there could have been something a little bit more there, but it was kind of neat how they were on, you know, opposite sides of the portal at the end there when they were kind of like having their moment. It's like, okay, cool. This is very clear. She's going down her path. I'm May. She is taking her own path and finding herself. So yeah.
Yeah. And I liked how the ancestor kind of like embraced her really excitedly. Obviously, like she was appreciative because it was this gift that she wanted to give her family and they'd been rejecting it for generations. So she was like, yay, finally someone appreciates the thing I did. But
thank you, kid.
Yeah, it's just like a really sweet movie. And I think the scene with the dad was great as well, which is a big turning point for her in deciding what she's going to do about the panda, because when he finds the video on the camera and he just thinks it's like cute and funny, like a normal person would. And I love that he's like, delete this if you want to, but like, it made me laugh. It's just such a simple like sentiment, but
well, yeah, I appreciated the father character because he was used very minimally throughout the movie. He made the food, he had like 4 lines, and that's it. That's all he needed to do. And he's just kind of like the good pillar that, you know, the family's built around. But yeah, I appreciated that conversation too, especially that line that he said. It was like, people have many different sides. Like some of them are messy, some of them are like, you know, a little bit more put together. And I definitely appreciated that, because the red panda in this movie is such a powerful like metaphor, not only for puberty, but I think just for the coming of age story. The Bildungsroman, saying I'm my own person, and so what if I'm a red panda? So what if I'm 10 feet tall and I can break someone in half with my jaw? I'm me. And I think that was a very important conversation for her to have with her father, of like, the red panda is you. It represents yourself. You make your own decisions in life, and just kind of come to terms with who you are as a person. So I appreciated that scene too. Her dad was a good little support character in that.
Yeah, I saw a joke on Twitter today or yesterday where it's like, in a lot of Pixar movies, it's like the mom is this incredibly complex and deep character with a lot of emotional layers, and then the dad is just like some guy.
He's just there to take out the trash.
Yeah,
but everyone moving.
But and the thing about the panda too, which is kind of great, is like it is something that's unique to her that makes her distinct and stand out, but it's also part of her like family legacy. And it's so in a way she's embracing an element of her family that previous generations chose to reject. So it's like, it's kind of a neat combination of embracing where you came from and embracing who you are in a new way. And that's kind of neat, I think.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. I didn't even, I don't know, I was so focused on the puberty that I didn't really look at it that way. But yeah, you're totally right about that. It's like kind of multifaceted in that way as a symbol in this story.
Yeah, which it like, and maybe I don't want to speak too firmly on this because I don't know, but maybe that is what a lot of immigrant children go through, or children of immigrants go through in countries like the US and Canada, because they're like embracing that element of tradition sets them apart from a lot of their peers in these countries. And sometimes maybe their parents are trying to assimilate a little bit more than they would like to, and they're bringing that element back in. I don't know. I'm just talking out of my ass right now, but I like that element. So
yeah, me too. And it was neat to see how May tried to navigate those like social complexities of like schooling and like what her peers expect of her, but also balance that with her own family heritage and like her day-to-day life with her family. And that is very well manifested by the red panda spirit. I just really enjoyed that. A fun fact about red panda symbolism, since we're on the topic of it as well, just in real life, in general, the red panda is usually associated as a symbol with feeling with gentleness, compromise, and patience, which I don't really see a ton of in May per se, but that's okay. I see the gentleness and I see a little bit of compromise in there, but I enjoy that part of the symbol. And then it's also in China, it's also the red panda is a symbol of good luck.
Yeah,
which is kind of neat.
That is kind of neat. But yeah, do you want to talk about the like controversial negative criticisms for a little bit? We've kind of touched on them already.
Let's talk about the panda in the room. Do you want to kind of summarize?
You can take point. I think you have more details here than I do.
Okay, yeah. So from my understanding, it's the reception of this film has been a little bit mixed. Audiences really enjoy it, and a lot of people in general enjoy it. I think a lot of critics do as well. But this movie has received some negative criticism, and from what I can tell, the similar like thread in all of these arguments against this film, against all these criticisms, is just about the puberty exposure, because the red panda is very clearly a symbol of puberty, coming of age. It's menstruation. It's your growing body hair in weird places.
And that itself is the subject of the plot a little bit, because her mom thinks that is what's happening to her, that she's having her period, and she brings like pads to school. And it's, I don't I think there is a lot of like metaphor there with the panda. I don't think it's necessarily strictly just that, but
Yes.
Yeah, and
What?
and just to like, so we have it like on Rotten Tomatoes, 95 critics, 73 audience. Like people like this movie. It's well liked, but there is the
Yes.
what I call the concerned parents brigade who's coming
Yes.
out
Mm-hmm.
in
Being like,
opposition to
don't show my kids puberty. I don't want them to know about puberty. I
yeah.
gotta explain it to them myself when it's way past time.
Mhm. Yeah, I maybe I'm going out too far on a limb here, but I don't think these criticisms are made in good faith. I'll just say that.
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of suspicious behavior around
Yeah,
this
I know,
movie.
right?
It's almost like
It's
people are trying to review bomb it.
yeah, or maybe not even review bomb, but like they have a problem with it, maybe because it's about someone who looks a little different in an area that they're not from, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to come off as racist, so they find a thing that is a little bit less outwardly shitty of them to say,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how they choose to critique it. Because I don't think anyone who is like actually a good faith critic gives a fuck about the fact that this movie has a plot element about periods. I really don't.
I don't see what the harm in that is, especially since like every kid's gonna go through puberty at some point. Like,
Yep.
it doesn't matter how much you try to like shield them from, sex, or like try to avoid the subject. Like, people are gonna find out about it one way or the other. The internet exists. Like,
Yeah.
people can Google puberty and get a million articles on it, and
Mhm.
it's literally that easy. And it's like, it's also kind of like a weird double standard of like those concerned parents in that brigade. They're completely fine with these other like Pixar and children's films that showcase death and betrayal and murder and violence and
Mhm.
just like all this horrible other shit. But it's a hard stop when someone says menstruation on screen. Like, that's no, you can't do that. Like,
Yeah, especially if you're like a parent who brought your kid to see Avengers Infinity War or something, where you see
mm-hmm.
Gamora get splatted off a cliff. Like, you don't care about this stuff. And maybe for a parent of like a slightly younger child, they didn't take their kid to see Endgame or Infinity War or whatever. But still, like, it's just part of life, man. Get over it. They're gonna have to figure
Yeah.
this stuff out eventually. And even if they're too young to have that conversation, they're probably not gonna understand it yet. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there are tons of sex jokes in Disney cartoons and Pixar cartoons. They're not there for the kid, they're there for you because you're with your
Yeah.
kid. So if they don't understand it, that's fine. If they're too young to understand it, they won't get it, and they probably won't ask you about it, really. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to ask what the mom thought it was. They're going to be focused on the fact that the main character is a panda bear.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, come on.
Yeah, it's totally absurd, and I feel like it kind of highlights how certain people will politicize the
Mhm.
smallest details of anything, of any movie, any TV show, any event, and they'll just go the extra mile to make a point about it. And it's like,
Right.
no, yeah, it
Well,
boggles the mind.
and it's like those like typically conservative parents who are like, when like the don't say gay shit in Florida, where it's like,
Ugh.
I don't want my kindergartner learning about sex in school. They're in third grade to kindergarten. They shouldn't be hearing about it. It's like, that's not like talking about the fact that gay people exist. It's not talking about sex, you asshole. Like, or is talking about straight people existing talking about sex? No, it's not. That's like, it's there's a really troubling trend about people like associating non-heterosexual relationships with sex, and it seems like they're applying that same sort of logic to this. It's like, that's just about your fucking body, man. Like, that's just about how like people develop, and if the kid's
Mm-hmm.
too young to have that conversation, they probably aren't gonna bother with it. Like, they'll get to
Mm-hmm.
it, and then when they rewatch this movie a little bit older, they might relate to it a little bit more because they're fucking going through it. Like, holy shit.
Go figure. It's another moral panic in America.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
And like to kind of round out, I guess, this conversation too about the puberty, like we've kind of touched on it before. Yeah, kids are going to learn about puberty sooner or later. So, why not like educate them on it through a medium and a narrative that's going to be enjoyable to watch, and it's going to be relatable to them, and it's going to be just like a fun experience. Like it's not going to just directly head on say this is puberty. Like I don't know. I just feel like there's like sex education. I'm not going to tell people how to like teach sex ed, but when I was being taught sex ed, I remember watching videos that were made in like the 90s, like early 90s, that were like just terrible.
Very uncomfortable.
Super uncomfortable. Like they were just like way too awkward. Like the acting was horrible. Like nothing about it was like really enjoyable, and it just made you laugh the whole time.
And you're just being taught by like your normal teachers who you then have to go have a conversation about like math with an hour later. It's like it's uncomfortable. I'd rather I get what you're saying. I'd rather have some knowledge relayed to me ahead of time, maybe through something that isn't so weird.
Yeah and maybe something that's like speaks to my identity a little bit, because like I feel like so many coming of age tales are just male oriented. They're just male narratives time and again. So it's nice to see one that isn't necessarily that. It's more focused on the teenage girl. And I know there are some stories like that out there, but we need more of them.
Yeah, and the Chinese Canadian perspective is great too. Like we should have stories that showcase all these different perspectives. It's a wonderful thing. Our world is very diverse and has tons of different people of various backgrounds. Like you should be excited to see these different types of stories. It's good. It's great. Like what the hell is wrong with you if you don't want to see that?
I know. Yeah, it's absurd. But that was the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Panda in the room. Yeah. One other thing that I just have to bring up.
Okay.
I'm sure some other people that will watch this movie will have a kind of similar like mental note to me, but I'm kind of a big fan of Bob's Burgers. I've watched way too many of those episodes.
Okay.
Over and over again. But there's a boy band in that series called Boys for Now. They're really funny because like they're technically boys for now, but like the one who's like the oldest is like technically his name's like, or he's marketed as being like 17, but he's more like 25 or something like that. Like it's just so weird. But like they have this weird kind of like subplot in the series where like one of the members leaves and then they come back and like they're kind of connected to the plot. But like whenever I saw Fort Town on screen, I was just like, Boys for Now. That's all I could think about was Boys for Now from Bob's Burgers. And I'm sure some other people will have that same connection. I just thought that was just funny to me.
Yeah. One like small, maybe not even negative that I have is like, and not a negative necessarily because maybe it's just there to establish that she's starting to go through puberty and starting to become attracted to people. But like when the subplot with the store clerk guy, like it seems like she's sort of realizing she finds him kind of cute. And then after the mom like goes ballistic on him, he's not part of the story anymore. It doesn't really lead to anything, and maybe it wasn't meant to. So I'm not trying to knock it too hard for that. It's just, an interesting note.
Yeah, it could have been nice to bring him back into the story somehow, but yeah, I have no idea how they would have integrated him back in. But
yeah, there was a lot going on already at the end of the movie.
And it's a kid's movie. We don't want to make it too complex. Like I have this other thought here of, this is a great movie for like representation. One thought that I had, totally not necessary because there's already so much going on in this film and it's a kid's movie, is that they could have taken it one step further maybe and kind of embraced like some LGBTQ representation in the film. Again, totally not necessary because there's so much messaging in this movie already.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of like all the girls in this movie were boy crazy. It could have been nice to have like one girl who was like, I'm not as boy crazy, but I'm interested in that over there,
Uh-huh.
but
Yeah.
just a thought, definitely not needed in this movie.
Yeah, and there may have been something subtle there. I don't know. Usually, the Disney Corporation only allows very subtle nods to LGBTQ people because they gotta fund those reactionary politicians too, which is big stink. A lot of Disney employees actually walked out today.
I did
In
hear about that.
protest to Disney's actions regarding that. So good to see the
That was-
employees taking a stand against their employer. But
Was that about the don't say gay bill? Was that
yeah,
it?
so Bob Chapek, the new CEO of Disney, basically released a statement last week because it came out that Disney was still funding all of the politicians who support that bill. And everybody was like, what the fuck? You claim to be like this bastion of progressive values in the business world and media. And then he was like, we're gonna keep financially supporting these people, but we're gonna support minorities through our inspiring stories. And everybody collectively was like, you're a fucking asshole.
Let me just roll my eyes as a community.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, this is a good lesson to learn. Corporations are not our friends and they are not allies. We talk about this all the time, but they are profit seeking. That is it. They are going to fund both sides of the political aisle in every case. And they will not take a stance politically if they do not think it's financially in their best interest to do so.
Yes. Yeah, we do talk a lot about how much we love these Disney movies and stuff and these Disney series, Marvel stuff, but secretly we are against Disney a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like, I am anti-capitalist fully. I hate all corporations. And I mean, no ethical consumption under capitalism or whatever, but it's like totally valid if you don't feel comfortable supporting a Disney product. I get that. I wish I had the willpower to do that. I'm at the breaking point with like Harry Potter shit. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna go see that new Fantastic Beasts movie.
I have no interest in it.
I mean, it looks bad on its own, but like Rowling is just such an out and about bigot at this point that it's like everything she touches just turns to shit. So
yeah, ain't that a bitch when your childhood heroes turn out to be monsters?
Yeah. And then a lot of people, it's leading a lot of people to re-examine the Harry Potter books and stuff like that. Like, oh no, there's a lot of not good stuff in there. That's like, ugh. But
anyways,
but yeah, back to the movie. It is a really good movie, and it's cute. It's fun. It's a nice story, I think.
Yeah, it like we said earlier, I think it accomplishes exactly what a child movie needs to accomplish. As soon as I finished it, I was like, I feel good. I feel like I just feel like everything's gonna be okay. When you finish the movie, you're just happy. I don't see how anyone could be like upset by the end of it or really dislike this movie. It's nice, it's warm, it's fun, and it hits all those important beats along the way.
Yeah, Pixar always is able to generate an emotional response. They're so good. They've been good at it our entire lives. Like, damn.
Yeah, it's yeah. We were talking about this like before the podcast started, but it is really hard to mess up like a kids movie formula. It has happened with a few.
Yeah, I think like Illumination is the master of fucking it up.
Or even like I think like one of the worst like Pixar movies that was kind of like a flop was like The Good Dinosaur or whatever.
I haven't seen that yet, but I've heard I've heard it's actually fine. Like, it's not as good as their best, but like I never saw Cars 2 or Cars 3, but
me neither.
But like every one of their movies I've seen, I've thought is great, and it's not just because I was a kid for a lot of them. Like like all the Toy Stories are obviously great. Like Finding Nemo, Finding Dory. It does seem like when they go back to the well for a sequel, like it doesn't land quite as hard. Except for Toy Story, really. Like all four Toy Stories actually are pretty excellent.
Yeah, I still haven't seen the fourth one, but yeah, Toy Story, we just rewatched like the first two films like this year, and yeah, the animation not as great as it is today, but those movies hold up so well.
But like they were the pioneers of this animation style. Like it looked Toy Story 1 looks pretty bad now, but like for the time, That movie came out the year I was born, I think.
Oh my God.
Hold on, let me verify that.
We are so old.
Load Google. No, it came out in 1995, so the year after I was born.
Oh,
But,
came out when I was born.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, Pixar has been doing great stuff for a really long time, and they continue to do so. And it's I really hope there isn't something going on with this Disney Plus exclusive release. Like, I hope this is a fluke. Like, I hope Disney isn't pushing them to the side in favor of Disney animation. That would be really shitty.
Oh yeah.
But we'll see, you know.
They just got to pump all that marketing money into Spider-Man. Get those Marvel movies. That's where the money is.
Well, I mean, that's like, yeah, it is. And that's the problem with Disney owning so much of the industry. Like, we've talked about this, how Nightmare Alley released like around the same time as Spider-Man, and they're just not doing great things for their other properties.
Yeah, right. It's weird. It's kind of like a form of like cannibalization, you know.
Yeah. Or it's just like, yeah, it's cannibal. It's like letting their big ticket properties cannibalize everything else that they own, which is why they shouldn't own so much. But
yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But any final thoughts on Turning Red?
No, I think I said my piece on it. Just kind of wish I had a movie like this when I was growing up about puberty, but maybe there was one and I'm just not remembering it.
Yeah, it's really great. But let's talk about some other stuff super briefly. Niles, what else have you been reading, watching, playing, doing?
Yeah, so for a while there, fans of the podcast might recall that I was reading the Injustice Comics series because I wanted to get the story because they were creating a movie for it, and I finally sat down and watched that movie after reading all or the first 5 years of the comics. Oh God, that was disappointing.
Oh no.
What a fucking disappointing movie. Ugh. I might ask us to do a full episode on this, but you know, maybe not. Because I've got some thoughts on it, but I honestly think, you know, just to summarize, Injustice, not great as a movie. It really should have been like a 4 or 3-part series, because there's so much content in the comics that they just ignored or glossed over or said, we're not going to do that. We're just going to take this one scene from year 2 and we're going to put it here. And like, I did not enjoy it.
Do you think it was maybe an adaptation of the game and not the comic?
It might have been. Might have been. Because yeah, I didn't play the first Injustice.
Yeah, we played Injustice 2. We did that together, right? We switched.
Yeah, we did.
That was fun.
That was a good time. Yeah. So I'm not entirely familiar with the first Injustice game, so maybe that's where they drew some more of the inspiration. But like, compared to the comics, it just made me so frustrated by the end. I was like, this is a miss for me in my book.
Yeah, well, that's a shame.
Yeah, so maybe we'll do an episode on that, maybe not, who knows. But I can't remember if I mentioned this in the last episode, but I've been a bit on a Miyazaki binge this year, like just rewatching a lot of his movies. So rewatched Princess Mononoke the other week. So I think, yeah, I probably mentioned that, but still holds up. It's great. And then just the other day, my girlfriend's been watching this series called The Gilded Age. It's on HBO, and it's kind of like akin to Downton Abbey to a certain degree.
Same creator, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's the same people who made it, but they address everyone very formally. You know, it's old timey. It's like the main character is like he owns the first railroad company or something like that, and he's just like a crazy millionaire, and like it's all about these rich families. And I didn't really want to touch it with like a 5-foot pole because I was like, I don't want to go down a Downton Abbey hole again. But I watched one of the episodes last night and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back and rewatch this. So
yeah.
But that's kind of it for me lately. Dylan, what about you? What have you been up to?
Yeah, I don't know if I've mentioned this on a previous episode, but I'm reading Christopher Paolini's new book. He's the guy who wrote the Aragon series back when we were little kids.
Right.
Yeah. He has a new sci-fi book out called To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. He and his sister like co-created this whole, I guess it's going to be a multiverse or universe or something, but I'm like 300 pages into the book. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
And then other than that, just Elden Ring is consuming my life. Like I've done very little else with my time other than play that game, but it's really good. So I have no
Hey,
regrets.
that's good praise of a video game.
Yeah. I have a feeling it's gonna make me eventually like kill all of my friends in the game. I just like have a like I was doing a quest and you're hanging out with this one guy, and then I'm trying not to spoil it for anyone who's listening, but it's like the dialogue makes it very clear that if like this other character does a certain thing that they're definitely gonna do, like it'll like forcibly drive one of the other people like insane to the point where they'll just totally lose their mind. And I'm like, oh no, no, no.
No, I like these characters.
Yeah. And that's apparently a big part of a lot of From Software's games. It's like they really leave you alone by the end. They're very somber and upsetting stories for the most part. Because like I think the Dark Souls series deals with like the world is repeatedly ending, and then eventually it ends at like the end of time or something. But I think like I've finally gotten over the hump with From Software through Elden Ring, so I really want to go back eventually and play like everything from Demon Souls on, because it's like there's not much like this company's games out there, really.
Yeah, I've heard like, it's challenging to get into those games, like just because they're difficult, and every enemy that you encounter one shots you or whatever.
It's more like 2 or 3 shots, but like
yeah, it's challenging, and you got to do a lot of it's yeah, I've only ever seen people play Dark Souls. I've never like actually taken the dive myself, because I feel like I would just get crazy frustrated, but maybe I will now.
What Elden Ring I think is a great entry point, because it's like if you get stuck, it's open world. You can go elsewhere, and then you can use the weaker enemies who can still kill you pretty quickly, but they're much easier to deal with. Like you can use them to practice and then level up a little bit. And also, like the games are notoriously difficult, but there are tools within the game to make it easier for yourself, like gameplay wise. Like there's not a difficulty mode or anything like that, but like if you really lean into magic, you can kind of steamroll a lot of things that would be otherwise challenging. So you can kind of choose your own difficulty, and it's like it's less hard and more punishing. Like for the most part, if you die, you can kind of be like, okay, yeah, I messed up. Like I see what I did wrong. I got and usually it's like it feels like you're being punished for getting greedy is what I found. It's like it's like usually when I die, it's because I just want to get like one more hit. Like, oh, I'm close. He's almost dead. I can get him. And then I get punished because I got out of position. So it's like it's punishing you for not respecting the game almost, which is kind of cool. And it plays into the lore of the games as well, because like the worlds you're in are super hostile and challenging, and it would kind of be untrue to the material if it was easier,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
it's such a cool game to play. It's so neat. And George R.R. Martin had some hand in creating this one. I don't think he did much, but
he sat in the back and pitched a few ideas, and they said, all right, you get back to writing that book of yours.
I honestly don't even think that's an exaggeration. I think he initially like created some characters and some basic rules for the world. And even Miyazaki has said like he would be pretty shocked at the direction they took the characters in the game. So who knows? But one more thing about it. People who have played this game have probably fought Radon already, but he's a boss fight that a lot of people were getting stuck on, and you'll love the description of this fight. Basically, like there's all this build up to the festival of Radon, and you go to this castle, and then this speaker, it's like a bunch of other people are there to fight Radon, and he's like he gives this big speech, and then you teleport down to a beach, and then you can summon NPCs in this game. Usually it's just like one. The Radon fight though, you can summon like 10, and you're on this big beach with kind of a dune in the middle, and he's at the top of the dune, and you spawn in and he starts shooting you with this massive bow and arrow, like this purple
Cool.
electrical bow, and you start summoning your people from the summoning stones, and you all like charge up the hill at him together, and you have to dodge the arrows at just the right time, and then like the 10 of you take him on, and halfway through the fight, like he just jumps away, and then you hear this like a big meteor comes crashing down and tries to hit you, and
That's so cool.
It's so epic. And when I beat him, it was like the 11th attempt, and I had no heals left. I had one hit of damage left, and I just like all my allies had fallen, and I just got like one good clean hit and brought him down. It was so satisfying, and my heartbeat was like unhealthily fast. I could feel it without touching. It was so crazy. It was epic. But it's like that's what these games do. It's like it creates that feeling every time you beat a boss. Because there's like the first main boss I died to 30 plus times. But I think it's like the reason people get addicted to these. It's like in every fight, like every boss fight, there's a moment where you realize it's like, this is it. This is the one. I'm gonna get him.
This is the one.
Yeah, it's like I've learned the attack patterns. I've executed this perfectly, and he has 2 hits left. I've got his ass. Like, and it's so satisfying. So, like
that's really cool. I might need to get that game. Yeah,
it's cool. Yeah, you make sure you have a system to play it on. But
yes, that is important. Rule number 1.
Yeah, but until 2 weeks from now, which we need to decide what we're going to do an episode on. But where can people find you online?
People can find me online at Niles Got No Styles on Instagram specifically. That's about where I'm at. Dylan, what about you? Where can people find you online?
On Twitter at D-Day Movies, on Instagram at DylanD1026, on YouTube at D-Day Movies, and on Twitch at D-Day_movies. And sorry we're a day late on this episode, by the way. We had some scheduling stuff over the weekend, but that is all right. And we will see you all 2 weeks from yesterday.
Thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you all.
All right.
Until next time.
Peace. Bye, everyone.
Bye.